There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at saving the board. So if I go back to here, I'm going to show you the wiki book. Now the wiki book under question 9 asked us to allow the player to save the game, and then after saving the board array, which player goes first. What we're going to do is we're not going to do the entire question, we're just going to look at how to save the game. So we can take a snapshot of the board, save it into a text file, and then reload it next time we play. Now I do have to show, for certain reasons, this is the code that's already on there, so you can go to the wiki book and you can look at the Pascal solution, and just because I'm sure he's going to watch the video, you can see it was one of ours that created this one. That was Ben Spring who stuck that up there for us. So this is not my code. This is Ben's code that I'm about to explain to you. But what I've done is I've taken it from here, I've put it into the Capture the Sarrum. I have adjusted it just a little bit. Okay, so here is my code. If we go to the bottom there, if we look at the main code, there's only 2 lines that I've changed. Now my code starts at line 429. Your code will start a little bit higher up because I've added in 2 extra procedures. So if you go down to the bottom of the code and look at your main code, underneath where I have initialized board, you can see there I've called initialized board. I've then also called load board, and I've passed in the variable board. What type of variable? Have a look up on the board if you're not watching on YouTube. Have a look up. What type of variable is board? It is a T-board. It is a T-board, and a T-board is a user-defined variable type. So what we've done is we've put a user-defined variable type, a type T-board, which actually just holds a 2D array. Why have I got a T-board rather than just passing an array in there? Anyone? Okay, so the reason you're having to pass in board is because you cannot pass an array into a function or a procedure as a parameter. You have to pass in a T-board. You can't pass in an array. But the T-board holds the value of a 2D array, which means that we can pass it in and out as a parameter. Okay, so we're going to call load board. And we also need to be able to save it. So down here, if we move down just a little bit, you can see if whose turn is W, then it becomes B, else becomes W. Or after that, we're then going to give them the option of saving the board once they've taken their turn. So every turn that we take, we're going to give them the option of saving at that point. And it's calling another procedure called save board. And again, we're passing in our T board, which is called board. Okay, so we're passing our 2D array, which holds the current status of the board. I'm going to run you through these 2 procedures, which are just up here. So underneath get the move. Now the reason we put it underneath get move is because these will be called in the ones above. So the reason we put our procedures and our functions, all of our subroutines in a specific order, is because the ones at the bottom need to be used by the ones above them. So they have to go in a certain order. If you declare a procedure below one which tries to call it, your computer's going to get very, very confused. So they do actually need to be written in a specific order. We don't just stick them in there for no apparent reason. So we'll start off with save board because that's the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to play our game, and after a while we're going to get bored, and we're going to decide, actually, I want to save it and I want to come back to it later. So the idea here is we're going to pass in the current board, so whatever status our game is at this point, and then we need to have some local variables. Now the local variables that we've got here are save my game, and save my game is a type of text. Text is different from string. Text will allow you to bring in an entire text file. So you can have new lines in there, you can have delimiters in there, and it can read it line by line. So it actually brings in the full text file. I and j are used in our for loop. What kind of variables will they be? They are integers, but what variable types are they? If I asked you to name a type of variable.
So local.
They are local variables. But if we have certain types of variables, if you see something within a for loop which shows the number of iterations, it is a stepper. It's a stepper. So I and j are going to work as steppers because they work within our for loops. And save is just a char in exactly the same way as we've seen it in the main program. This is going to save. If you want to save a game, enter y for yes. If they enter in a lowercase, we're using that ORD and we're using char to bring them out into ASCII and then back into their character by taking away 32. So what we're doing is we're swapping. We could use 2 upper, we could use 2 lower. In this case, what we're doing is we're using ORD and char, and I suggest very highly that you learn what they do because I have a feeling that they're going to come up in section C. So if it is a capital Y, then what we're going to do is we're going to actually use our text file. Now, assign basically says assign a text file. And what we're going to do is we are going to assign save my game as our file, which is text, and we assign everything within sboard.txt. So we take everything in sboard.txt, put it into save my game, and then we've used this reset and rewrite. Actually, we only need rewrite. Rewrite allows you to overwrite it. Goes to the beginning, clears everything down, overwrites everything. And we're rewriting save my game. Now what we've got here is that we've then got a nested for loop. So if we look there, we've got for I equals 1 to 8. So there I is our stepper. And then inside j is our nested stepper for the nested for loop. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of our ranks using I, and then we're going to go through each file within the rank using j. At this point, I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. If I go to slideshow here, that is an 8x8 array. If I select that first one there, I've selected the first rank, which is I is now 1, j is 1, so it selects the first file within that first rank. If I move on, it's now selecting the second file within the first rank. I is still 1, but j has gone up to 2 because it's the nested loop. So it's that internal loop that has to go all the way up to 8. So here, again, I is still 1 because that's the external loop. Your nested loop is now 3, so we've gone up to file 3. And it's going to do this an awful lot quicker than I can. So the idea is that you go through each row or each rank, and then you look at each file. So we're just doing everything that we would normally do for a 2D array if we have to search through the array. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. That would be desperately boring. But what it will do after that is it will move, hopefully, onto the outer loop again. So I've gone all the way up to 8 with j. I go back into my outer loop, which means that I is now 2, and I can start looking at that second row, but my inner loop will now go from 1 to 8 again. So j is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to the end, and then we're going to come back and increment I. And that's why you've got that nested loop, so that you could go through every single file within every single rank, which allows you to access absolutely everything within your 2D array. So there is what you're looking at in the code. So for I is 1 to 8, and then for j is 1 to 8. And then what we're doing here, I've made a small adjustment in there. Actually, for every line, we're saving whatever is in the current board at that point in the array, and we're just writing it to a text file. So I will show you what my text file currently looks like. Let's have a look. I really ought to have had this open before. Never mind. Let's see. There we go. So there is my SBoard. And that's what it looks like once it's written to the file. So that was the last game that I played. I moved a black red'em and I moved a white red'em just one forward. and you can see it puts in whatever's in that item, sticks a comma in it, moves along, puts another item in there, puts a comma in there. Once it gets to the end of the line, it moves on. And you can tell that it's done that because here, if j equals 8, then I'm going to write line, but if it doesn't equal 8, I'm writing. So the difference between a write and a write line is that write will just continue all the way along, whereas a write line will actually put a line break at the end. And I want a line break when I get to column 8, because my ranks are my files, so there's only 8 files at this particular point in time. I could officially, rather than put from 1 to 8, put from I equals 1 to the board size, and there is a constant which shows me that, so that this wouldn't break if I change the board size. We're not for now. We're just going to play with an 8 by 8. Okay, and at the end, really, really important, I'm closing save game. I'm closing the file. And the reason I'm closing that file is because later on, when I want to read from it, or if I want to save again, I'm opening it and assigning it again. But if you had a book and you open it once, you can't open it again. In a program, if you open a file and you try and open it again, what you actually get is an error. So you have to make sure that you open things, you close them at the end. Okay, so that's going to save your board, which is brilliant, but there's no point in saving something if you can't open it. So we're going to go down here, and this is actually a little bit easier. Now, load board, again, it's being passed board, which is our T board, and it's got a few more local variables. So remember, these are local variables. They're saved inside the program. You can't get, sorry, inside the subroutine. You can't get to them from outside the subroutine because they're local. You've got, again, save my game, which is the text file. It's the text within the text file. Now, we've got 4 integers. We've got I, we've got j, we've got x. I, j, and x are all steppers. They show us where we are, either within the file or within our for loops. Check, slightly different, and I'll explain that in a second. Line is a string. Line will get a line of text from save my game. So we have save my game, which has lots of line breaks, and line will get a full line from that text file. A load is this thing that we saw right at the beginning. Do you want to load again, yes or no? And we're going to use ord, and we're using char. What does ord do? Come on, has to do with ASCII. Anyone? No? Okay. Ord will take a character and turn it into its ASCII value. So it gets the number which represents that character in ASCII. So if I said ord turns it from a char to ASCII, what does the char function do? Does the opposite. It takes a number and shows you what its character is in the ASCII character table. Okay, so if we get y, we're going to assign again, we're going to assign sboard.txt to save my game. And then we're using reset. Now, reset essentially is a word for read. I want to open this to be able to read the contents. And I'm reading the contents of save my game, which is essentially sboard.txt, everything that I've brought in. I starts off at 1. So I've got an assignment in there, and then I haven't got for loops. I've got repeat until. So I'm just going to open this up so you can see here. So here I've got repeat everything until I equals 9. Now I could have a for loop officially, but there are certain places in here I don't want it to increment every single time I run this code. So there are certain conditions, and because I've used conditional statements, I might not want it to increase every time. So I've used a repeat until. So why would I not just use a while loop? What does a repeat until do that a while loop doesn't?
continues on until a condition is met.
Very, very close. What it does is it runs it at least once. So it will run all of the code unconditionally, and then it will repeat until the condition is met. So repeat until always runs at least once. While will only run until the condition is met. And for will run for a set number of iterations. So here I'm going to repeat. I'm reading a line of save my game. So I'm reading a line of the text into the string variable line. So I'm just dealing with one line at a time. At which point I reassign the value of 1 to j and 1 to x. Then I've got a nested repeat until, just to make your life a little bit easier, with if line x. Now remember that we've seen this before. If you use square brackets after a string variable, it treats it like an array. So it treats it as a character array, and it will give you every character. So x currently is 1. So what it's saying is that if the character at place 1 in line is not equal to a comma, and the character at the place 2 in this x plus 1, so if the character at place 2 does not equal a comma, then assign place x and x plus 1 into board. Then we move on. So if we found a comma, so if x is a comma, then we move on. So j has to go j plus 1. And j, excuse me, j is the files. So remember we were looking at files and ranks before. I, in this case, is the rank, j is the file. So if we find a comma, we're moving on to the next file. And we continue doing that until j equals 9. Once j equals 9, we need to move on to the next rank, and we need to do the second row. And it will repeat until I equals 9. So it goes all the way to the bottom, and it will do every row, every column, or in our case, every rank, every file. If you haven't got a great big diagram somewhere explaining what the ranks and the files are, now is a good time to do it. Okay, so once we get down to the bottom there, and we've assigned everything to board, and remember that board is a global variable, so we can assign what its value is in here, because global variables can be seen within the subroutines. It's just your local variables that can't be seen outside of it. We close the game. Or rather, we close save my game, we close that file. Once we've closed it, we've finished. So let's go and have a look at the bottom. We call it, there. We load the board. Then we display the board. So load board is very similar to initialize board. It's just loading it from a text file. And this is the point at which I'm going to run it. We're doing it live. Wish me luck. Okay. So we've got here, do you want to play the sample game? Well, we're going to say no. And do you want to load again? Okay, so in this case, let's actually load it and see if it compares to the text file that I showed you earlier. Okay, so, and our text file still open down here. There it is. So you can see that line there has been read across there. That gap is shown as a gap, and that red and there has been brought into that third line, or that third rank. So let's close it, and you'll need to remember what it looked like at this point. Close it down, and what we're going to do is we're going to run it, but we're going to play from the beginning, and we're going to change our moves. Okay, so no, the sample game. No, we don't want to load a game. Here is our new game. Which one should we go for first? Something different. Should we do 4-7? And let's move that to 4-6. Okay, I don't want to save it at this point because I want to make a few more changes. So I've moved a middle one. Let's move another middle one down so we can make sure this is definitely different. So let's go for 5, 2, 5, 3. And at this point, I am going to save it. Okay, so you see the board there. It said I've saved it. I can carry on playing, but I have saved that board as it stands. Now, if I close this down, because I'm now bored of playing, and I come back later, and I want to open the board. So no, don't want to example game. Yes, I do want to use my last game. It saved it and it's loaded it from the board. Okay, now for those of you who are in the room, I'm going to put all of this on the X drive. Otherwise, it is on the wiki book and you can take that solution. You might need to make just a few adjustments to make it work like you've seen it there. Okay.